morning and good afternoon, wherever you might be joining us here from in the world today. My name is Bram, Lagrou. I'm welcoming you here to this webinar, which is on strategies and habits to deal with setbacks along the way of goal achievement. And joining me in on this very webinar is for the fifth, sixth, I don't recall exactly time, Daniel Tolson, business coach par excellence. Has done extremely well with emotional intelligence and developing teams in that sense around the world. Also an expert in strategic planning. We want to share a few helpful strategies, concepts, and ideas with you tonight. Any thoughts and questions along the way, feel free to just put them into the chat box and we'll come back to them sooner or later. Thank you very much again. My name is Bram. Hello, Daniel.
Hey, Bram. Thank you for a lovely introduction as always.
My very pleasure. Great to see you again here. So tell us, get us a bit up to speed with the emotional intelligence side and how that will be relevant to the topic.
Well, from the latest research from some of the sharpest people in the world, we understand that emotional intelligence is the biggest predictor of success. 58% of our success in your personal or professional life is going to come down to your level of emotional intelligence. When we have a look at success in business, fully 95% of your success in business overall will come from your social skills. So what we're going to learn is we're going to become very emotionally intelligent. We're going to be able to communicate, but we also have to be able to manage our own emotions. And if we fail to manage our emotions, the emotions take control. We start to doubt ourselves. We start to fear failure. We start to fear rejection, and all these little, what do they call them? Goblins get inside the head, and you start to fear the boogeyman. So we're going to talk about emotional intelligence tonight and show you how to be more emotionally intelligent. And the reason why you want to be more emotionally intelligent is you want to make more money in less time. You know, nobody has ever said to me, Daniel, I want to work longer hours and get paid less. Everybody says, show me how to work less and earn more. And that's my hidden agenda for you. And I'm not going to tell you that's my agenda, but it is. So thanks for having me, Bram.
There you go. Everybody, of course, I think we can sympathize or appreciate the point where you're coming from, which is making more money and do it in less time. I think a lot of the people like myself, Daniel, just a quick one here. I just turned 40, and you obviously were so kind to earlier sing a song for me, so I appreciate that. But I think we all somehow hit that timeline in our life where where the penny really drops and where we really start reflecting on, well, this is how far I've been. This is what I probably still have laying ahead of me. And am I happy with where I'm at, financially speaking, for example, and in other fields of life, which are important too, right? It's not just money, but money is definitely a big one. So yeah, very, very important what we're going to discuss here today.
You know, talking about money, Bram, money in Australia for a lot of people has become a dirty word. You know, they grew up without money. They grew up in a family where there was never enough money, and it's become a dirty word. But let's think about it. Nobody ever complains for having too much money. I know millionaires, I know decamillionaires, hectomillionaires, centimillionaires, and nobody's ever said to me, Daniel, I've got so much money it's causing a problem. But it's always the person without it. And my personal mission is to never hear anybody in business say, I can't afford that. And I am sick and tired of hearing business people say, I can't afford it. The reason why they can't afford it is they don't know how to afford it. And it's a totally different strategy. And that's my mission, to never hear anybody say in business, I can't afford it. And I'll show you how to do that tonight. Make more money in less time, and your problems will go away. It's a simple thing. Very simple.
Love it.
So let's get into it. And I know that our followers here, Bram, they love practical ideas. These are business people we're talking to. They want practical ideas that they can implement to bring about an immediate result. And I know you're full of those, and you share them with tens of thousands of people every year. So I'm going to pass the ball to you, and I'm going to let you take our team on a journey. Go for it.
Awesome. Well, thanks for that. Let me just quickly share a slide here with everybody on this very webinar. I think it really will help people to get a bit of an understanding as to what I'm going to be touching on today. And particularly when we're talking about goal achievement, you see here right now, there's this little chart where I created a model with 6 elements. And when we're trying to achieve a goal, there's mental, emotional, physical, relational, financial, and spiritual, a spiritual component to it. It's 6 facets that all, in the best cases, all work in unison. Now, let me just quickly run through them, and then later on, I'll tackle one by one with a few practical strategies on how to beef it up. Because ultimately, if people that are right now watching, or will see it later on, are reviewing this, it's really crucial that they are self-aware and they pick up where their strengths lie, but also where their opportunities lie for growth. Because you might be really good in one or in two, but if you can find ways to actually beef up the others that you might be a little bit behind on, that in itself might really leverage it all. So first things first, the mental component is the one where all habits really, we got all these habits, we got thinking, and we know from working with Brian Tracy and people like them that the way we think is critical because it really predicts how far we go. If we say, as you said earlier, I can't afford that, it's a thinking pattern that starts to engrave itself, and it's a mental programming that starts to write itself inside our device called our mind. Now, the good news is that one habit can replace another, so there can be reprogramming. If we want to say that, hey, sales or money is a dirty word, then we can actually reprogram it and find ways to actually start seeing that money gives opportunities to people, and program it in a more positive, favorable way that allows us to welcome it more and feel okay receiving it, which obviously in business, some people struggle with asking for money, or asking for a raise, or asking for more money per hour, and therefore work less but earn more. So habit pattern creation goes hand in hand with myelination in the brain. The good news is that when people really start developing the habits of certain thinking, it starts to write itself physically in the body, and it wraps myelin, which is fat, around the neurons to actually reinforce those patterns, and the speed by which you actually can envision it, emotionalize it, and all those very things that are required for goal achievement. I'm just going to go quickly through the others. The emotional side, again, in terms of goal achievement, we know that emotions are sometimes stronger than our mind. We like to think that by just setting a goal, we can achieve it, but we also know from Napoleon Hill that what man can conceive in his mind, but also believe in his heart. And this is where I really am emphasizing. Believe in your heart. It means that you really have to have an emotional connection to the goal that you're envisioning. And it's an emotional goal that is inspired, not inspired by fear, right? So the emotional side needs to be a positive, favorable one that really drives you to create, as opposed to restrict you and keeps you small and fearful and the likes. So we sometimes block our emotions, yes. We sometimes guard our feelings, yes. We sometimes forego our heart's desires or refrain from expressing ourselves. Imagine you got this client sitting across you. You're in a tough negotiation situation, and just right now it's crunch time. If you fringe, the person on the other side, if it's a trained negotiator, will pick up on it and just hammer you hard. And then obviously you will walk out with less, let's say, outcomes. The other person will win. But if you are able to stand up for yourself and express yourself wholeheartedly, peacefully, assertively, or emotionally intelligently, to say it in your words, then you can really resurrect yourself and almost take a spin on the situation. But therefore, emotionally, you need to be ready for it. We also know, last point here on the slide, is that emotions are addictive. So whether it's negative emotions like fear, or positive emotions like desire and willingness to succeed and hunger for success, or an addiction to success, they all are addictive. And the longer you dwell on it, the more addictive they become. So it's important that you use this insight to create the right emotions more so, and find ways to eliminate or at least diminish the negative emotions that tend to keep us small. The next section here, or next facet, is physical. We know that thoughts and feelings can ingrain themselves in the body, and therefore they reinforce the habit. We talked about myelination, that's that part. But what if we can also now use more habit patterns for us to physically excel? sport, for example, or daily exercise is one of those things. And I'll touch a bit more on that, the science behind it and how you can actually do it without needing too much time, but just get the physical benefit that then also spikes your emotional life and your mental life. Next one, fourth, is relational. I think we all know that the most happiness that we derive in business and life is from other people around us. If we got people that lift us up and that we feel really great around, it helps. Notably the spouse, because we spend a lot of time with him or her. But on the other side, if we are really, if we have a network of people around us that are bullyish, that are very critical and sarcastic and always make, comments at your expense, then obviously that is not very helpful. And it's important then that you take actions to take a change for the better, because your happiness really depends on it. And the more happy you are, the more you can perform in business and in life. I'm not going to touch more on that. Financial, then, you already touched on it, but let's just be very clear-cut on one thing. There is no, let's say, judgment around money. Even though people might just have judgment around money and call it a bad word or call it whatever, call it names. It's not good or bad. It's neutral. It's really the emotions that we have that make it good or bad, and the way that we interpret money. So again, financially speaking, we are all destined here to make a lot of money, but we self-sabotage. We get things underway. And so it's about old programming that we need to somehow become mindful of, emotional intelligent about, and then start developing new thoughts, emotions, and habit patterns in terms of actions to handle money more favorably, right? So the challenges really are, what are your beliefs right now around money? Bring them to the surface. And last but not least, I recently sat down and watched an episode with Grant Cardone, and it was very interesting how this guy, somehow started saying that he's a spiritual man. I never saw him, let's say, confess that, but now he did in an interview on London Real. And I think he really made a point that is so true. Money is a mere reflection to show you how well we have become as a person within, so that we were worthy of receiving more. And to the extent that we were managing it well, we get more of it. So making money is a spiritual journey, definitely. And the more we build a legacy that is of the good to others through our teachings, through things we leave behind, through relationships that we establish, through networks that we create, anything, businesses we create, that's a legacy. It's our why that really lights us up, that inspires us to act, and that gives us plenty of energy to make it happen. So for those people right now thinking that they might have run out of energy, or they're a bit flat for a long time, it just means that you're spiritually not aligned with your plan, or your divine plan, or your journey that aligns with the very things that you find important. You might not have taken time to spell it out, or you might have allowed others to say what is important to you while it's not. It's important that you really see this as feedback, and as soon as you fulfill it, your spiritual path, you will start seeing that you are more happy, more enlightened, more inspired, you have more energy, and things come more naturally and easily. That's it for me, Dan.
Beautiful. These are great life lessons. And remember, your focus here for watching these videos is just to take one idea away. If you can take one idea away from today's training and implement it, then you'll start to succeed faster. And one of the qualities of the most successful people, of millionaires and billionaires, is the orientation of action. So if you watch this and you invest your time in watching this and you don't take action on an immediate idea, what will happen is you'll never take action on it. And what the successful people do in comparison to the unsuccessful is the successful people just take action on the things that the unsuccessful people don't. Just take one idea and give it a go. But don't give up on it too early. My rule in life is you've got to try something 10 times before you decide if it's good or if it's not good for you. So give it some time. Now, in emotional intelligence, what we know, there's 5 vital functions. And it's a package of 5. There's self-awareness, and that's understanding why you think and feel the way that you do. A lot of people don't understand their thoughts. But what you've got to remember is your thoughts predict 95% of your feelings. So if you don't know what you think, you can't control your feelings. So you've got to be very mindful of that. Also, what we have to think about is regulation. Self-regulation is the ability to manage the emotions. So once those negative habit patterns kick in, the fear of rejection, the fear of failure, you need to know how to handle them. So our government in Australia is very smart. They know people can't drive. People are what we call confidently incompetent. They believe they can drive. They're positive they can drive, but they've never had a lesson. And we think just because we're living every day, we're good at managing our emotions. If you haven't trained for it, it's impossible. Think about your favourite football team. They don't get there because they've got a positive attitude. They got there because they took positive action. And I think that's one of your words that you use, Bram, positive action. And then we're going to have motivation. And we think about motivation as differently in emotional intelligence than most people think about it. Emotional intelligence with motivation is the ability to get knocked down and to get back up and get knocked down again and get back up. And all you have to be able to do is get back up more often than your competitor and you'll succeed. It's not that hard. It just takes a lot of discipline and persistence. But most people run out of motivation and they give up too early. And, I was watching something of Brian Tracy recently, and what Brian says is that most people give up before the very first attempt. So when it comes to success, it's actually bloody easy. Just keep getting back up and eventually you'll win. So we want to have a look here and take a deep dive into self-regulation. Now, only 36% of the population, three out of 10 people here tonight, will be able to predict their emotional state at any given time. Now, as a population, that is just way too low. Some do, some can't, and most people can't. And you want to make sure that you're one of those 36% who can predict the emotion. Because if you don't know what emotion you're experiencing, you can't deal with it. If you don't know the thought that you're thinking, you can't substitute it. So let me show you something. One of my clients here, and we live in a day and age where we can test everything. We've got so much science. And we have a look at emotional intelligence, and you can start to measure these 5 areas of emotional intelligence. My client came to me and he said, Daniel, my emotions take over. And we had a look at his emotional intelligence, and we realised that his self-regulation score came in at 3.8. The emotion came up, he couldn't identify it, and it took over, and it took control of him, and he lost control. And if you've ever hit black ice in your car, and the car's lost control, you can't get it back. And what happens? You crash and you burn. And that's what was happening to my client. So what he had to do was he had to learn to distinguish the different layers of emotion. And I'm going to talk about identifying these in a moment. There is anger. You have to deal with anger differently to sadness. But emotionally intelligent people know that there's actually 12 kinds of anger. There's not just one. There's 12. And then there's varying degrees of sadness. One of my clients, she was diagnosed with depression. She was treated for sadness, and she wasn't sad. She was angry. One of the stages of depression is a lot of anger. So you've got to make sure you're working on the right emotion. There's also fears, and there's fears of all kinds. There's fears of failure. There's fear of rejection. But there's no such thing as a fear of public speaking. Interesting. People think there's a fear of public speaking. There's no fear of public speaking. It's a fear of criticism, and it's a fear of rejection, and it's coupled with incompetence. Most people are scared because they're nervous, because they know they're going to get up and make a fool of themselves because they haven't trained. Bram and we've spent tens of thousands of dollars being trained by the top speaker trainer in the world, and there's a lot to learn. So my client here, he learned to regulate his emotion, and over a period of about 180 days, he became incredibly good at it. All of his fears disappeared. All of those things that he was angry about, he could deal with, and they didn't take control. And what he did, he went from a 3.8 in terms of self-regulation, and he went all the way up to 7.5. And that's the growth of his emotional intelligence. So here's my point, is if you don't plan for this carefully. If you don't plan for a reversal, if you don't plan for a setback, you will fail. So at the start of your journey, you got to ask yourself, what are these obstacles that I'm going to come up against? And I want you to start to think about that today. First of all, ask yourself, what's your goal? And secondly, ask yourself, what are some of these obstacles? And get them down on paper. And in a moment, I'll be back and I'll share with you ideas to identify these different emotions that are holding you back. So if you've got some questions, start to pop them in the feed below and we'll answer them as we go along. Now, Bram, I know you've got a lot more to share there as well. And where do you want to take it from here?
Thanks, Daniel. Look, what I wanted to do now, we obviously touched on these 6 facets, and I'd like to just go through one of them, each one, throw it back to you, touch on another one, and just weave in here and there some practical strategies along with some information, again, that is helpful. But we definitely keep it practical. First one's first, mental one. Obviously, as a psychologist here, I've trained a lot on understanding like how the mental side of things works, whether that is for a personal life or business, it all relates. But I noticed that one thing that, when I personally set goals and my clients did, there's always stuff that comes along the way. There's setbacks that are thrown at us. And then it's like, how do you mentally deal with them? For example, they say when the going gets tough, the tough get going. In a way, that is one of those little like one of those brain hacks, as they call it, just to reprogram yourself to say, hey, it's important that I persist no matter what, that I do it, that I get up again no matter how many times I got punched, because the longer I get up and the more often I do, the more I'll prevail. Failure is not an option is one of those other beautiful ones. Failure is not an option, or we will prevail. It's like using these little affirmations to just keep, or mantras to just keep telling yourself that this is important. But the important thing is, though, that sometimes we get so pinned down on the mental side only, and we think that just mere repetition will do it. But if in our heart the message doesn't resonate with us, or we second guess it, or we don't want it to be true because we really yearn more for sympathy of others with us and our miserable state that we're in, or the hardship that we're experiencing, then in a way, the emotional side is undercutting the mental side. And so the best thing you can do is make sure that the both of them work on par, in line with each other. Because once again, there was no science in it at the time when Napoleon Hill said, what man can conceive in his mind and believe in his heart, he can achieve. There was no science yet, but now, right now, brain research and neuroscience is unequivocal about it. So the more you can align your thoughts of, let's say, things that when the going gets tough, the tough get going, and in your heart you can feel it that you're one of those tough cookies that can and will prevail no matter what. That's when you start really to using the signs in your favor, and physiologically it will start to impact your body. Your body will start to reflect what started on in your mind, what you experienced in your heart, and you gave it fuel. Physiologically, it will start to ingrain itself in you. The funny thing is, when they actually looked at the brain of Einstein, obviously one of the great physicists of the world and mathematicians, even though he never really graduated with some of those degrees, he just figured out ways to think differently than most other people did, squeeze something outside of his brain that few of his contemporaries were able to do. And as soon as they split his brain in two and they looked inside, guess what they saw, which was very different to others? There was more fat, meaning white matter, than there was gray matter. The fat is myelination. The fat, or the myelination, myelin, is a substance that pretty much, it's almost like the body taking it as a command. When you say, this is important to me, like for example, when Roger Federer is on the thing and he says, this sort of way that I hit the ball is important to me, and I'll practice it not once, not twice, not 3 times, but 4 million times, the body sees it as a command from the mind, and it starts to wrap the neurons along with fat around it to make that that hit of the ball more precise, more swift, more agile, more full of strength, more directed, and therefore more impactful. That more myelin happens to wrap itself around the neurons that are required for a habit, any habit, whether it's physiological, emotional, or mental. The more myelin you got around it, the more successful you have to become in that area. They say it takes 10,000 hours to get good at something. That is the stuff that was preceding the science that now is really unequivocal. So you just have to take the time to study the roots and bear the fruits, right? It's really important that you do that. Now, just coming back to the mental side of things, just to wrap it up before I pass it back on to you, Daniel. Sometimes, again, we're too dogmatic in our Western worlds where we're very much coming from a cognitive mindset, which is goal setting is all about in the mind. It's a mind game. It is not. That's really important that we get it. There is so much more to just the mind. It is an important facet, but it's only one of 6. So there's 5 more to work on. You need to fuel them together. The more you fuel them together, the more all of them start lining up to help your goal to become more successful because they're working in unison rather than, one little angel on your shoulder trying to hit it with the mind and then a little devil sitting on your shoulder, on the other shoulder, which is the emotion of fear that somehow undercuts it. It doesn't work, right? You need to somehow have both of them working together. So it's very important. So anyway, that's my part here. Over to you.
Thank you. We're living in the greatest time of all of human history. We know more about psychology today than at any other time in history. And there's no better time for you to be alive and to succeed. This is fascinating stuff. This is some of the latest research that's been discovered. So adding on to what Bram's doing there and giving you some more practical tools as we go through is the first job for you as a business person is you've got to increase your levels of self-awareness. Now, self-awareness, like we said before, it's understanding why you think and feel the way that you do. It's also understanding which emotions impact you the most. So if one impacts you more than another, what you've got to learn to do is you've got to become better at dealing with that than the other. The fact is that everybody has fear. It's a natural emotion, but some people have regulated those emotions much better than others. So we're going to have a look right now. There's 4 dominant fears. And what you've got to agree upon before you can accept this as your reality is that as a human, you're 100% emotional. You are 100% emotional. And if you can accept that, then life's going to be very easy. If you don't accept that, life's going to be hard. So just accept it as a fact and notice what happens. Firstly, you've got to develop self-awareness and you've got to learn to recognize your emotions. Now, one of the clients I was working with recently, she kept on having fears of all kinds, but she couldn't pinpoint what the fear was. She'd say, I feel scared. And you'd say, well, what type of fear is it? And she said, I don't know, it's fear. But there's many different types of fear. And depending on your personality, you'll have one dominant fear over the other. So we do a lot of psychological reports, and there's one that we use. It's called a DISC report. And a DISC report looks at 4 key areas of your behavior. And based on your behaviors and your unique blend, so your blend is totally different to anybody else, fears will work in combinations. So, for example, one of our clients here, one of her biggest fears was the fear of being taken advantage of. But she didn't know how to articulate that, so she couldn't deal with it. That fear of being taken advantage of was also coupled with the fear of making a mistake, but she couldn't articulate it, so she couldn't deal with it. But these 2 fears, do you think they work simultaneously or separate? Sometimes they're simultaneous, sometimes they're separate. And for her, it'd become a cocktail. So she'd have an automatic fear of being taken advantage of and simultaneously a fear of making a mistake. And she would get in this loop. She would get in this trap and she couldn't get out of it. It ended up costing her hundreds of thousands of dollars of sales in her business. So what are these emotions that are getting the better of you? First of all, some people have this fear of being taken advantage of, and it will be to a greater or to a lesser degree, but it will impact you. So think about it. On a scale of 1 to 10, that fear of being taken advantage of, is it for you? Is it high? Is it medium? Or is it low? Think about it. Other people have a feeling of a lack of social support. Now, we see this all the time. Somebody goes and starts a business and they say, my family aren't supporting me. My friends aren't supporting me. That's their fear. And you just got to be able to recognize this. If you're a leader, you've got to be able to recognize this in your team members. Thirdly, a lot of people in business today fear the loss of security. They have the right makeup, they have the right knowledge, they have the right skill, they have a great attitude, but this fear of a loss of security is so intense that they never pursue their passions. They never pursue their entrepreneurial ventures. They never start that business. And like Les Brown says, they go to the grave with their music still in them. Now, if you fear that loss of security, if you fear the loss of the paycheck or the paycheck dropping, that one's impacting you. And you got to speak to us and we'll show you specifically how to eliminate it. And think about it. Some people may have a fear of a loss of security and a fear of being taken advantage of simultaneously. That's a different beast. And then fourthly, and you'll know who you are right now, it's the fear of making a mistake. People say, Daniel, I'm procrastinating. I say, no, you're not. You're scared shitless of making a mistake. And they go, it's so true. You're not procrastinating. You're bloody scared. And that's okay. It's okay to be scared. There is nothing wrong with being scared. I've been scared my whole life, but I just don't let it stop me. I was a professional athlete and I was scared to get hurt, but I still did those things because it was important to me. And if it's important to you, you will find a way. But be honest with yourself. If it's not important to you and you give up, just say it's not important. Don't kid yourself, because you'll only trick yourself. And what Bram said before is if you keep lying to yourself, you still build these fatty cells up in your head and you're convinced about the lie. You can become a professional risk taker or you can become a professional risk avoider. It's one of the same. But you've got to know your fears. So, final point, and I want you to hang your hat on this one. If you don't master your fears this year in business, my guarantee is that you will get left behind. And you need to make this your single defining focus, is to neutralize and eliminate those fears. If you don't, you will never achieve your goal. That's what unsuccessful people do, but you're going to be successful, and you do what successful people do. You deal with your fears and you face reality as the way it is.
Good stuff. Love it. There's so much to all these emotions here. So I think you already touched really well on it.
my emotions anger, my emotions anger, and I get angry because I see people giving up on themselves way too early.
Yeah.
And I'm an angry person, and it makes me angry, but I know how to channel it to become successful.
And by the way, I think it's probably at this stage really important that we just also say, sometimes people think that, there's a certain school of psychology that says positive psychology, and it almost tells people that they only should have happy thoughts. That is, of course, a big jar of bullshit, right? So it's not about that. We all have a mix of all sorts of feelings, negatives and positives, and it's not us, saying that, somehow need to find a way to eliminate the negatives. They help us to stay grounded. They help us to stay balanced. But it's like you say, it's about channeling it in the right way. If you have anger, direct it to make you persist in the line of setbacks, right? That's the way, rather than seeing anger to start blaming and bitching around and moaning about why things are not going for you. It's a very different way of handling things, right?
And what you just mentioned, Bram, is we call positive stupidity. There's very positive people who are absolutely stupid, and that's called positive stupidity. And there's nothing wrong with anger. You just got to know how to channel it. As a competitive athlete, when I didn't win, I got angry. But what happened was I'd go back and I would train harder, and then I'd get another setback. You never guaranteed success. And then I'd lose and I'd get angry. And then what I'd start to do is I'd start to move out of my comfort zone. And the problem with people in their comfort zones today is they don't get angry. They don't get frustrated because they go, this is comfortable. It's not until you get angry and utilize and channel that anger that you'll start to move out of the comfort zone.
Shall be all right, Daniel. Shall be all right.
Thanks, Bram.
No worries.
Oh, thanks, mate. Thanks, mate. What do we say? Oh, Bram, I just love you the way you are, mate. No, don't say that to your friends. Say, get out of your bloody comfort zone, grow a set of balls, and take some actions. But a lot of people are stupid. They say to their friends, I love you the way you are. Don't be too ambitious. You'll set yourself up for failure. Just be happy with what you got. Bullshit.
Yeah, those are of course the people that are part of the network that not necessarily help us grow and lift us to the next level. So I think it's sometimes good to have the hard, candid conversations so that people really start saying, hey, you know what, maybe it is time for me to step up. Maybe it is time for me to get a bit more serious about such and such. Maybe it is time for me to, look better after my family or whatever, or look after myself a bit more, after the tummy grew and the six-pack left.
Yeah. I encourage people to start slapping their friends in the face and say, wake up to yourself. Stop telling yourself a bullshit story and slap them. They've got to wake up. Because what happens is, and a good friend of mine said this, he said that we often reward people for their bad behavior. So if your friend comes to you and says, oh, you know what, mate, I've decided not to do this business because there's no future in it, slap them in the face and say, stop giving up. Go and take some action. I remember I was working with a client. He said, business is not good. And I said, well, how many prospecting calls did you make this month? And he said, none. I said, no wonder it's no good. No. Ladies and gentlemen, nothing is bought. Nothing is bought. Everything is sold. People aren't going to come to you. You've got to go to them. It's never been any different for anybody else in the past 6,000 years. There's the two oldest professions on this planet are prostitution and money lending. And I was in one of those. I was in porn for 17 years. And we had a very successful pawnbroking business where we lent money. And see, you have to go to the market. You've got to go find new clients. You've got to go into new territories. But you've got to have the balls to do it. And if you don't have the balls to do it, don't make an excuse. And if you do make an excuse, expect a good slap. My wife will come and slap me in a minute for misbehaving, but over to you.
Very good. I'm going to quickly take over for two facets and combine them now, the emotional and the physical one, because I find that there's three strategies or habits that really help both of those facets. So if you really want to channel your emotional life more so in a way that you want, so that you channel anger, your sadness, your excitement, all of that, and you channel it in the right direction to help you achieve your goals and help to combat the setbacks along the way. Equally, how you physically can get more out of yourself, because obviously emotions are also physically, you can feel it, you start, your bladder gets full when you're really, about to speak and that you're real prepared, or, you might getting a sore back if you feel that you're not really performing at a good level. So all of this sort of stuff are physical expressions of the emotional life. Now, to combat that, three strategies that they're not rocket science, but again, it's probably another good time to revisit what you're doing in this field, because it's the action that will make the difference. First one is physical activity. The science is very straightforward that when you are physically active for either a HIIT intensive type of thing for 10 minutes only a day, in the morning preferably, right? Or 20 minutes for jogging, like no fast pace, but just 20 minutes. Or, if you live in a skyscraper and you need to do like 10 stairs up, or your office is on the 6th floor, if you take the staircase instead of the elevator, all of these are ways for you to physically put your body to work, grease the machine of bones and muscles and all of that to really make it perform. But along the way, what happens is that neurotransmitters are released to stimulate the production of new cells in the brain. So let's just say that you're now challenged by a setback that you didn't foresee, or that you're looking at this humongous problem in your business, that keeps you from growing it. Then it's your ability to create new cells in your brain to think outside of the box called your brain. Your old brain won't get you there. because the old brain was only capable of solving the problems of the past. The new problems right ahead in the future need a new brain. So the new cells creation is pivotal. The faster and the more thoroughly you create new cells in your brain, the more your business will flourish, and also other facets in your life. So that's really important. The second part of it is that epinephrine and norepinephrine that is secreted in your brain while you do physical activity play an important role in helping the sympathetic nervous system produce energy. Some people that I talk to, they say that at the end of their work, they don't have any energy left to do anything. I challenge you on it, because you can, if you want to, turn it around and actually do either a 10-minute intensive session or a 20-minute jog or swim or whatever it might be, or a quick ride or something, and just really do it. Because if you want to really still be good for another 4 hours or so, this physical activity will help you to release the energy that previously you didn't have. So it's important that you get that. You choose to create energy. You're like a power plant. A power plant doesn't have energy, it creates it. And you too can create it in your body. The next one then, after the physical activity, the second thing then is meditation. Now we all know that meditation is good, but again, let me walk you through some of the specifics here with meditation. Meditation, you only need, if you're one of those that says, I don't have time. Meditation, the longer you do it, the less you need of it. The first time you might need 20 minutes or 25, but the longer you do it, the less you take. I know people that right now can just sit 5 minutes in a quiet room in between 2 meetings and have a power meditation instead of a power nap that just puts them on fire, makes them completely present, channels all the negative energies and directs them to be on target to hit their goal. And that's what meditation helps you do. Now, physiologically, meditation keeps cortisol and adrenaline in check, hereby reducing stress, because it also then improves the release of serotonin and oxytocin, and sleep. But for those people that have too much on their mind, away in the middle of the night. Obviously, if you haven't got a restful sleep, that in itself will undermine your energy throughout the day, your concentration and all of that. The production of new cells will start getting sluggish, and you build up more toxins. But by meditating, you actually detoxify your body. So you don't have to wait until your next detox. You can just use meditation as a way to detox. And there you go. You already got the right bottle.
Detoxing.
So there's lots of things there that are happening. The other thing is also by decreasing or increasing the levels of dopamine, it also improves your focus and concentration. Once again, you do the meditation, you'll benefit in the following ways. You don't do meditation and you actually take those benefits away from you. They're there ready for you to tap into if you do it consistently. For myself, for example, I do every second day, I go for a run where I alternate between jogging and fast sprints to, have the hits, but also the more consistency. Then the other day I'll do meditation, and that way I do every day at least one of them. Right? 15 minutes only. It's all I need, 15 to 20 minutes. Just build it in and you set yourself up for a great day, particularly if you do it before you do anything else in the morning. That's where I find out it really works. Last but not least, breathing. May come a bit, let's say, as evidence, but as soon as we are stressed, we have a tendency automatically to inhale more superficially, more in the upper side of our lungs. Therefore, we're not fully releasing oxygen within our body, and therefore the blood and that don't really full benefit unless thoroughly. So you mentioned as an intelligent being, time with yourself when either for getting emotionally wound up. So I agree. Breathing can help you get collected if you want, or at least be more mindful of for the right course of action next. So breathing is really important. the quick way to do it well is by first making that you take us back from the situation. So whenever you're in a charged environment, fear, anger, frustration, anger, whatever it might be, or too much related, you want to take it back first and then tell yourself, I'm going to now inhale 6 times, 6 counts. Sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You inhale. While you do it, you're telling that while you're inhaling, you're taking fresh oxygen to replenish or recharge your battery. As soon as you've done that, you then go to step number 3, which is releasing everything. So now you do 9 counts out. So you inhale 6 counts, you exhale 9 counts. When the 9 counts you're doing this, while you're doing that, you tell your brain, and now I release anything that I don't longer want to support with my mechanism. That might be the frustration, the sadness, the depression, the whatever emotions, desperation, whatever, you let go of it. You might feel guilt, you might feel judge someone, you just let it go while you're exhale. So take that back first. 6 counts, 9 counts. That breathing techniques straight away applied. It takes only seconds to do it, maybe a minute, and it turns the situation around like that.
These are good strategies, ladies and gentlemen, and you just got to take them and you just got to apply them straight away. You just got to do it straight away. There's a great story, and my good friend Luke's just joined here as well. And last year, myself and Luke were heading over to the National Sales Conference over in Adelaide. And by the way, it's on again this year. Now, on the journey over, I kept stopping and I'd say to Luke, and we're traveling around Adelaide, and I'd say, Luke, so National Sales Conference is coming up tomorrow. He'd say, yep. And I'd say, are you nervous? And he'd look at me and he'd say, why would I be nervous? I said, because I'm speaking tomorrow. Are you nervous? And he'd look at me and say, should I be? And I said, you should be. And then we'd walk around a little bit later and I'd say to him, hey, Luke, are you nervous? And he'd say, about what? It's about National Sales Conference and me speaking tomorrow. Are you nervous? And he said, should I be? And I said, you should be. The point here, ladies and gentlemen, is there's nothing wrong with being scared. There's nothing wrong with being nervous. What's important here, it's the ability to identify your emotions, which is most important. What happens with an emotion is you can just identify emotion and it brings it up to the surface for resolution. Okay? You've got to remember that. You just got to start to identify it and it brings it up to the surface for resolution. Now, if you've got a little bit of fear in you, what will happen is you will prepare. And that's what I was saying to Luke. I am nervous because of why? I've never done this before. I've never done this speech before. I've never spoke in front of these people before. It's okay. And you've got to also give yourself permission. Because when you start your journey, you're going to come up against obstacles. You're going to have to do things you've never done before in order to achieve things you've never achieved before. And it's okay, which is the most important part. Now, Bram was just talking here about the release of these neurotransmitters in the body. What I've discovered in my research is as soon as you set a goal, what happens is you get a flood of dopamine through the body. It's amazing. As soon as you sit down and set a goal, you start to release dopamine. And you haven't even done anything. And you're getting these phenomenal free drugs in your body. Once you set the goal and you start to take action, this is when the heart starts to beat. That's called adrenaline. It's like when you're standing on a very tall building and you look over the side. Your heart's jumping. That's okay. Every time you move closer, for me, it was for the stage. Every time I took a step closer to the stage, the adrenaline's going. Because what you also get is you get a cocktail and you get excited. You haven't done it, but you're excited and you're willing to give it a shot. And then once you achieve your goal, your body gets flooded with another neurotransmitter called serotonin. And that's the happy drug. When you smile, you release serotonin. So you have an unfair advantage just by setting goals, by taking action towards them, and by achieving small steps along the way. And people who have dopamine, adrenaline, and serotonin in their system, they don't suffer from depression. They don't. It's impossible because your body's full of positive, happy chemicals. So how do you get there? The truth is that 97% of the population don't have goals. If you don't have goals, you don't get that constant rush of free drugs in your body. You don't get it. You don't get excited. You lose your energy. So as soon as you move into those 3% who start setting goals and you start to create strategic plans, you become this factory of free drugs. And every day you get these free drugs, every day you feel good, and all of a sudden you get the winning edge over your competitors. These drugs are so bloody potent that they should be illegal, but they are. Most people just don't know how to access them, and I'm hitting them all the time, and I love it. And I love life. That's my secret. I love life, by the way. It's because I'm always achieving something. It was once told to me that victory is the only thing that keeps us alive. And every time you have a win, you feel alive. And that's incredibly important. Strategic planning is all about planning in advance. And it's agreed upon worldwide that 1 minute in planning saves up to 10 minutes in execution. So you already have the unfair advantage. If you spend 10 minutes planning your day today, you will have an extra 100 minutes of execution the following day. You do that 5 days a week, and you're 500 minutes ahead of everybody else. You get an extra day every single week to produce results. So in order for you to be incredibly successful, and this is a millionaire habit, and I love it and I do it, and I'm going to share some very personal things about myself right now that I hope that you'll take and you'll start to apply them. Most people talk about positive thinking, and as I mentioned before, it's just positive stupidity. You've got to be realistic in life, and you have to understand that you're motivated both by desire and by fear. Fear has a motivating force of 2.5, where desire has a motivating force of 1. But you have to know how to use them. So I want to show you how I use fear of loss, fear of failure to my advantage. And since I started doing this strategy years ago, what happens is my results just went through the roof. I started to achieve more in a year than most people did in a decade. So in planning for success, it's okay to have positive affirmations, and you need to have positive affirmations. But you also need to have a list of things not to do, because people know what they're supposed to do, but they never think about what not to do. So in planning, you have to have both. So I'm not going to talk about the list of things that I do. I'm going to talk about the list of things that I don't do. So there's 7 things that I don't do. And I have a 4-page strategic plan. And it tells me what to think and what to say to myself. And it also tells me what not to do on a daily basis. And it helps me stay on track. So these are the 7 things that I remind myself on a daily basis. First of all, I say to myself, do not put things in your body that take away your focus or clarity, or anything that alters your perception. And I remind myself that on a daily basis, because you have to know what not to do. Secondly, I also tell myself, do not waste time on non-mission related activities. If it has nothing to do with my personal mission, don't do it. The third thing is I remind myself on a daily basis not to take rejection personally. 99% of the population have a simultaneous fear of rejection and criticism. It impacts me and it impacts you. But you've got to remind yourself every day, do not take it personally. It has nothing to do with you. Fourthly, I also remind myself, do not take work home. You could not begin to imagine how many marriages and relationships around the world that are ruined every single year because partners take their problems home. When you're at home, be with your family. When you're with your partner, be with your family. Don't take work home. And I've got to remind myself, because I have been a victim of that. Will I be a victim of that in the future? Possibly, but I seek to avoid it today. Because when you make a decision, you've got to make decisions that help you, and you've got to make decisions that prevent you from danger as well. Fifth, you have negative self-talk. You get a little devil on your shoulder that says you can't do that. Your competition is stronger than you. You don't have enough money. But what I remind myself every day is this. I say, do not say bad things to yourself. Because based on the law of belief, if you say one thing bad to yourself, the subconscious mind takes it as a reality. And especially when it's emotionalized, it becomes real immediately. So I remind myself on every day, Daniel, don't say bad things to yourself. And then I say, yes, sir, I'm my own sergeant major. Sixthly, now some of you may appreciate this, some of you may not, but I got no problem with rejection. It's not personal, by the way. I don't care. So the sixth thing is, do not stop God's work or it will be taken away from you. God has put me on this planet to do one thing, and it's to show you how to make more money in less time. And I know if I stop doing his work, he can take this away from me and she can give it to somebody else. And I remind myself that every single day, that it can be taken away from me. If I do not act on my gifts that I've been given by God, they'll be taken away from me. And I'll tell you what, God, I'll do my job today. That's why I'm here. That's why you're here, Bram. And it's late at night.
I love it. I love that one.
And then seventh, and I encourage you all to write this down. And I tell myself this because I have violated this rule in my life many times. And it's cost me years of potentially good deals. And the seventh thing that I tell myself every day, and I have to sit on this for a while, and it says, don't be spineless or cowardice. Don't be spineless, don't be cowardice. And you've got to drive yourself out of your comfort zone. And if you don't drive yourself out of your comfort zone, you're spineless. And if you don't drive yourself out of your comfort zone, you're a coward. And you've got to ask yourself this question. What type of family would my family be if everybody was spineless, just like me?
That's a hard one.
Ask yourself this question. What type of country would my country be if everybody in it was a coward, just like me? And these are universal maxims. And I ask these questions to myself every day. And they keep me on track. So you've got to know what to do. And you've got to know what not to think. So here's my final thought. If you fail to plan, you are planning to fail. And this also has to be in your strategic plan. Now, I love you. God loves you. Don't be spineless. Don't be a coward. Set big goals and take action on them every day. And if you do that, you'll get to the top and you'll stay at the top, because the reality is there's not a lot of competition there. So get there fast.
Good stuff. I love it. And thanks so much for sharing your personal not to do's with us as well, as a good guidance for everyone. That's very helpful.
Do it. Think about it. All these things are important. See, the older we get, we start to realize that life is a game of thinking. It's a game of thinking and feeling, thinking and feeling, thinking and feeling. If I don't want to feel like that, stop thinking like that. If I don't want to feel like that, stop saying bad things to yourself.
Yep.
If you master your thoughts, you will master your emotions. But you got to plan.
Excellent stuff, Daniel. It actually is a good sort of segue into, I'm actually going to combine again two facets here right now. One is the financial one, the other one is the spiritual, and I do it intentionally. Starting with a book by Dr. John DeMartini, great book for everyone to read. It's called How to Make One Hell of a Profit and Still Get to Heaven. And it's beautifully, geniusly written to confront people with the mental blocks that we've all erected in our mind around money. If, let's say, money is love, from one person that says, what you, Daniel, got to offer for me here is worth more than the money that I'm giving to you in return. That's an exchange, a fair exchange thing of love. That the token of it is money. The money that you invest in private school, if you send your child to school, is money that you say, hey, I value the knowledge and education and environment that I'm putting my school into. I value that more than the money that I'm giving the school in return. Money is really, it's important that we start really seeing money for what it is, that it's neutral. It's not good, it's not bad, but it creates opportunities for people. The more money you have, the more opportunities you have. The less money you have, the less opportunities you have. People sometimes say when they travel, especially when you go to Africa or Cuba, at the time when there was still a big embargo and, Cubans didn't have any money. Oh, they're the most happy people. Look at them smile. They got the most beautiful smiles. And it's so true. But guess what? All of them would love to have more money so that they could travel the world and do things that right now they haven't been able to do. If you have a family member that is seriously ill and there's this one cure that money can buy, but very few people can afford it, wouldn't you want to be in the boat to actually have the money to do it? I would. Yeah, I solely now see money being a source of love, a source of good and bad. Yes, both of it, but definitely opportunities. I think it's important. Sometimes we get really frustrated and caught up and emotionally really addicted to, sometimes lack of money or not seeing opportunities or seeing setbacks. And I personally have been there as well. I will openly confess, you've been open as well there, Daniel. I remember then when I sat down with one of my good friends who actually is a good source of inspiration. He taught me the right things, or at least planted the right seed in my mind. And he said, Bram, if you ever want to somehow overcome the situation that you're in now, by you infatuating with the challenge and the difficulties, you won't get there. But if you allow yourself to distance yourself from the emotion, the only way to get there is by writing out a plan. You list all the debts that you've got, the money you owe to certain people and whatever. You write a plan, a priority, you prioritize them, and then you work out how you're actually going to go about paying them all back. Now, I will say, that was the first time that I actually applied it. And as soon as I did, I mentioned earlier, when you write a goal, you feel the dopamine. As soon as I started writing out, listing like what it was, I actually started seeing a more realistic picture than the infatuated, beefed up, big monster that was just in my mind because it wasn't tangible. I couldn't say exactly how much I owed, how much I was in debt, how much I had to repay over a period of time. I couldn't say. Now, so much times later, I've keep my whole list of stuff that has to be done. I've got a plan. And because I've got a plan, emotionally speaking, I'm less involved. Mentally speaking, I'm more focused on an outcome rather than seeing the obstacle along the way. And so your point earlier about strategic planning, part of your plan should also involve your financial affairs. If you don't plan there, you plan to fail, right? So I think that's really important. I'm bringing it back to the spiritual side. And I say this because today I had this guy comment on one of my posts on Facebook who said, are you one of those guys that has, Jesus Christ resurrected himself? And, you could tell he came from judgment and he somehow said, and now you made all the money and money is God now. Now, I can tell where he was coming from just by the comment he wrote. Once again, everyone, money is not good or bad. It's a tool that shows that there's an exchange happening between something that you value more than the money that you had. And if you are actually the one who exchanges a service or a product, you are fairly expecting money for it in return. Even if you're in a not-for-profit or if you're helping people with personal development, it's okay for you to receive money for the good that you render. You're acting for a service, right? Last but not least, it's important that we give ourselves permission to live the life that is right for us. Dr. John DeMartini is a great guy who's done a lot of work around personal values clarification. And I think we sometimes a lot of people that really struggle, I would love to see numbers. I can't say statistics on this one, but I've got a sense from all the personal, coaching that I've done with people, the group work that I've done, that a lot of people really aren't allowing them to really live their full potential because they still believe that there's something out there that they should have to or to do, as opposed to allowing them to do exactly now what they're here for. They're not really living their vision or embarking on their mission and allowing to exercise the rights that they are here for and that they're equipped with. as soon as you give yourself permission to shine, as soon as you allow yourself to say the words that have to be said, as soon as you recognize the thing that really is important to you and you act upon it, that's when you get the spark. That's when people around you start seeing it, and that's when you become a leader. That's when you become an influencer. That's when people start knocking your door and asking you all sorts of questions because you become a magnet. And that's what I think was part of the law of attraction type of thing as well, in some shape or form. Now, I'm mindful, Dan, just again reminding everybody, thoughts or questions, put them in the box below so that we can actually do something with you guys as well.
And the number that you're looking for, Bram, was the people that feel that they're living far below their potential. It's 84%. 84%. And it was discovered in the 1980s that 84% of the population feel that they're operating at levels far below their potential. And everybody, I was on some calls this week, and I asked some business owners, I said, you know, if I was to ask you what capacity do you think that you're operating at right now? They said, Daniel, would probably be at 50 to 60% of our potential. That's it. That's it. And everybody knows it. You know it, whether you're honest with yourself or not. You know if you're underperforming. And I know I am far below my potential. I know it right now, and I'm not ashamed to say it because every day I seek to do something to get closer. At the moment, I'm speed reading. I'm reading a book a week. I'm averaging up to 3 books per week at the moment. And people say, you know, oh, but what about the retention of the knowledge? I don't care about retention. I'm just looking for one good idea. So the other day I learned to speed read. Can I retain the information? Well, I read a book in the morning. I got on the phone to a client on Monday afternoon. I gave them one strategy that I learned in the book in the morning, and it made somebody $6,000. How much was that $10 book worth? $6,000. Yeah. And your job is to fill your mind with more information. I run a very good program called Eat That Frog. And a lot of the people here tonight who have been on, they've been to the program. And this year at Eat That Frog, I'll be teaching my clients how to speed read, because your knowledge becomes redundant every 2.5 years. Every 2.5 years, 50% of your knowledge becomes redundant. So what you learned 5 years ago is gone. So you've got to keep coming back to programs like Eat That Frog. You've got to come to the National Sales Conference. You've got to read every book. You've got to take every training, because the knowledge becomes redundant. So I know the numbers, and you've got to know your numbers. The average person reads less than 1 book a year after they leave their formal education. I'm going to read 50 books as a minimum this year, but my target's 300. So what happens is the person with the most knowledge goes straight to the top. And I know I can read a book, but I'm just not operating at that potential. But I'm in practice and I'm in training. And just be honest with yourself. If you don't think you're operating at your full potential, be honest and come to National Sales Conference, and we will show you how to increase your sales. We'll show you how to double your sales and income in the first 90 days. You just got to learn how to do it. So come along.
That's it.
So Bram,
a nice plug-in as well. And if I just may, Daniel, for those people that are wondering where to go, that's salesconference.com.au. Salesconference.com.au. That's pretty much the space where you can find Daniel as well on the poster.
I'll be there.
And a few more people.
I'll be there because I'm going to learn. Although I'm speaking there and training, I want to come to learn. Hey, Bram, I put this the other day on Facebook, and some people sent me a little nasty message. But my goal is to invest more in my mind this year than my competitors do in their cars. So who do you think is going to win? People waste 50 grand on their car every year. It depreciates. I'm going to put 50 grand into my brain. I know where the return on investment is. A good training like National Sales Conference, it's a minimum of 7 to 10 times your return on the investment. Just like my client the other day, 60-minute training call. He pays $750 an hour for my advice, and he makes $6,000 immediately. And the same thing with the National Sales Conference. Come and learn from the top people in the field, and what will happen that week, you'll make more sales. The next week, you'll make more money. It's just how it works.
Exactly. Now, should we have take some time now for some Q&A, Daniel?
Yeah, well, Ollie's just thrown one in here, and he says, haters a fuel in my tank, high octane fuel in his tank.
Love it, Ollie. Thank you very much.
And previously he said, do you have a strategy to rebalance my mindset? What would you say there?
Sorry, say that again, the question?
Do you have a strategy to rebalance my mindset?
Okay, that's a really good question. I'll be very short and succinct on this one. That's Ollie again. See this way, if you observe yourself, I mean, what you can do is you can actually, a few days long, walk around with a little notebook and just observe what type of thoughts, like pretty intense thoughts, things that really you're hooked onto, that you just write them down in keywords, like, you know, keywords, for example, like infatuated with my goal, or, you know, got frustrated again. And you just keep writing down things. And what you want to do is you want to see a pattern. Like, are you more on the up or on the down? Are you more on the, you know, the elation, or more on the deflation? And you want to somehow create a pattern that you catch yourself on, because the pattern shows you how you can reach it by going with the other. So for example, if I'm somebody who is very self-depreciative, and anytime if somebody gives me a compliment, I'm going to say, yeah, but you know, it wasn't all that great. You know, I was kind of lucky. And, oh yeah, thanks. Somebody compliments me on my suit. Oh, you know what? It's not really all that great. You know, I just bought it somehow secondhand, or somebody gave it to me. Self-depreciation, what it is then, you need to then, if you catch yourself on that, you need to then pretty much say, okay, how can I now almost do the 180 degrees opposite of what I have a tendency to do? Because only when you do the opposite will you find balance. Balance means that you have an equal of both sides. And most of us are either self-righteous, they're more on the self-right side, on the elation side of things. You know, oh, I'm great, you know, I can easily do this, no worries, you know, I'll do that in my sleep, you know, I'll just show these guys, a piece of cake, you know, it's all that sort of mindset. Or on the other side saying, oh, you know, but I'm perfectionist, yeah, I'm not quite there yet, still need to do more and more. And that's on the other side. You're either on the elation side or on the self-depreciation side. And so you just need to balance it out. Catch yourself what you're most in, and then find ways to actually reprogram your mind with the opposite.
Bram, I'm laughing my head off here because you're talking about somebody giving you a compliment on your suit. Just do me a favor, just stand up for a moment. Show us your suit. Come on, stand up. Show it. If you want to see Bram's suit, have a look at this. Come on, show it. Turn the camera down a little bit. Oh, there we go. I thought, where's this going? He's talking about his suit and he's got a pair of shorts on underneath. He's very Aussie.
Mate, it's 10 o'clock in the evening, and yeah, I'm in my shorts.
Okay, well that's going to give a lot of people a lot of sweet dreams.
And by the way, we can cut this. We can laugh about ourselves, right? And we don't feel rejected if anybody starts criticizing us now. We're perfectly fine.
Bring it on, no fear. We just get rid of the fear of rejection and criticism, and we can get in there and slag ourselves off. I like that one. Okay, well, I better get going because I'm going to be on a flight to Dubai tomorrow night, and I better pack my bag. I better do that. So,
very good.
Ladies and gentlemen, the most important part of the time that we've spent together tonight is not the time we spent together. It's what you do afterwards. And when you take one new idea and you implement it, you will get an immediate result. And if you don't, keep implementing it until you do. And what you got to remember is the best times of your life are in the future. The most amount of sales that you ever make are in the future. The most amount of money that you're going to make is in the future. And the best part about the future is you're in complete control of it. So decide what you want and go and get it. So thank you so much for joining us. Bram, it's always a pleasure to see those legs.
Happy to show him off. You know, the runner in me, you know, likes to show.
2 days.
Always a pleasure as well, Daniel. Thanks also everyone for joining and for you know, the comments and the questions. Look forward to see you next month again, because we do this pretty much every month.
Absolutely. And we'll see you all in Adelaide. Good morning, good afternoon, and good night. Ciao for now.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Let's hit the stop button. There we go. Okay, well done. Well done.
That was fun. That was a lot of fun.